Hi, first graders. This is Mrs. Porzi from School 33. Today, I'd like to share a lesson with you about something called analogies. I'm not really sure you've ever heard that word before. Let's take a look at it. Yeah, if I look down here, let's pull up our toolbar. Well, maybe I can just show you like that. Yeah, there's the word analogies. Let's clap that word out. Analogies. Wow, that's a long word. Analogies. 4 syllables. Now, maybe you've heard of that before, maybe you haven't, but today we're going to read a story, answer some questions, and talk more about what analogies mean. Let's take a look at our learning targets for today. So I can answer questions about a text. We'll definitely be doing that. I can have conversations with others. Of course, we can't have a conversation online, but you certainly can talk to siblings and parents and other family members at home, and I hope you do that. Let's take a look at our next set of learning targets. I can use words correctly when I speak, and I hope that you'll be learning more about words and our other target, figuring out how word meanings are related today so that you can begin to use new words or use them in new ways. Let's take a look at our daily routine. So as we usually do, today we're going to review signs and learn the new sign for analogies. We'll be going over our resource list and information about analogies and watching a short video about what that means. And then read a story, of course, answer questions. And then at the end, I'm going to play a short dance video for you, just something to give you, oops, no, I'm not doing that. Here it is, a short dance video for you to just kind of get the wiggles out. So let's take a look at some of the signs we've learned so far. So the sign for classify, which means to put things in groups. Let's take a look at that. So you see how she's moving her hands? You're taking something and kind of putting it in a group. That's what classifying means. Let's go back to our next set of signs, associations. So when you make associations, it's like you're making links between things that sort of go together. And in this case, these are all associated because of the season of fall. So let's look at what associate looks like. So do you see how, let's repeat that one. She's taking that idea and linking it together. So that's associate. And the next one, comparison. So if you're trying to see how things are same and different, you're making comparisons. So let's look at that sign. How do these two things compare to each other? What's the same about them? And then we also did several lessons on antonyms, which means opposites, word opposites. So let's look at the sign that shows us that. That one didn't want to go over. Let's try that again. So let's repeat that one. Opposite. I'm going to slow that one down a little bit if they allow me to, maybe not. Let's move me out of the way. Technical difficulties. Does not want to repeat it for me. Oh, there we go. The meaning of the word is opposite. So things like big and small, dark and light, open and closed, left and right. How about words that mean the same thing? They're called synonyms. Let's take a look at that sign. So let's watch that again. So meanings that are the same. Let's have her repeat that. The meaning of the word is the same. Let's go down to multiple meanings. So more than one meaning. And we learned a lot about words that have more than one meaning. So let's take a look at that. Try that one again. Play it again. Multiple meanings, more than one meaning. The very last unit that we did was on absurdities, things that don't make sense at all. And that's such a silly picture of a giraffe in a tree. That really is absurd. So let's take a look at how she does that one. So that's like wrong thinking. Like that idea is wrong. That doesn't make sense. Let's try it again. The thinking is wrong. That doesn't make sense. So silly things. And then today, we're going to be learning about analogies. So let's see what that looks like in sign language. That idea can be applied or put to words that are put together that maybe don't make sense when you first look at them, but you have to find the relationship between the words. So that's what analogies are all about. It's about finding relationships between words. And that's one of our learning targets for today. So maybe we've not done that before, or you haven't in your class. So let's see if we can watch a short video that helps us understand what that means to find relationships between words. Let's put that up on our screen. So hopefully you can hear this clearly at home.
Analogies. Analogies are statements that compare or contrast ideas that seem to have no relationship, but really do.
Okay, so what he said there was when you take two words that look like they don't have anything to do with each other, you can compare them and find the relationship between them. So let's see some examples of that in this video.
Let's look at an example of an analogy. Hand is to glove as foot is to sock.
Okay, hand is to glove as foot is to sock. Now, when we do analogies, you'll see a lot of that phrasing, is to, as, this is to. Sometimes it helps if we can put it in a sentence, and I'll show you what that means in a little bit. But let's look at the relationship between the first two items, and then let's look at the relationship with the next two. So let's see if we can make this restart. Oh, it wants to give me a hard time. So we'll go back and we'll just restart it for you. Technical difficulties. I am sure you're not experiencing any of that at home, are you? I'll let you watch.
Analogies.
And then we'll talk.
Analogies are statements that compare or contrast ideas that seem to have no relationship, but really do. Let's look at an example of an analogy. Hand is to glove as foot is to sock. Huh? Okay, let's look closer. Let's try saying it like this. A hand wears a glove the same way a foot wears a sock. See how that works? Here's another one. Cold is to hot as wet is to dry. What does this one mean? Cold is opposite of hot, the same way wet is opposite of dry.
Antonyms.
How about this one? Flamingo is to bird as grizzly is to bear. A flamingo is a type of bird, the same way that a grizzly is a type of bear. When you know how to figure out the relationship in the analogy, you can even complete an analogy yourself. What was the relationship in this analogy? Cold is to hot as wet is to dry. Remember, cold and hot and wet and dry are opposites. So let's see if you can finish another analogy with opposites. High is to low as near is to what?
What's
Do
the
you know
opposite?
what word would finish this analogy? High is the opposite of low, the same way that near is the opposite of far.
Right, so near.
Let's do another one we've
far
seen before.
Are opposites.
Flamingo is to bird as grizzly is to bear. What is the relationship here?
So there's that.
These were types of animals. Let's try to finish an analogy that uses types. Chicken noodle is to soup as grilled cheese is to sandwich.
Right.
Chicken noodle is a type of soup, just like grilled cheese is a type of sandwich. The relationship? Types of food. So remember, analogies are just statements that compare or contrast two things that seem like they aren't related. All you have to do is figure out the relationship, and you've got it all figured out.
Okay, so you're just comparing the two words. And when you can figure out that first relationship, then you'll know what the next one is, and you can make the same comparison. So let's take a look at some of the analogies we have in our resource list today. So bus, here's the bus, is to ride. So let's put that in a little sentence like, I can ride a bus. Here's the object. Here's what I do with it. So let's look at this one. As what is to read. So the book is what I read, just like the bus is what I ride. Here's the object, here's what I can do with it. Here's the object, here's what I can do with it. Same relationship. Rake is to leaves as shovel is to what? Dirt. Because rake is a tool that I use with leaves. Shovel is a tool that I use with dirt. Now, I've heard somebody else do this one and put snow in here. And that would make sense too, because you can shovel snow just like you can shovel dirt. It's a tool that's used for moving dirt or snow. How about this one? Soccer ball is to, just as what is to throw. So if you notice, we're being given the object here, but not the action. And here we're given the action, but not the object. So what do you do with a soccer ball? What's this boy doing? Kicking, right? So soccer ball is to kick, just like what is to throw? Baseball. So you throw a baseball, you kick a soccer ball. It's an object and the action that you do with it. Just like we had here, an object and an action. Let's go on to the next one. Scary is to, the witch, right? Just like funny is to a clown. So it's, how would you describe a witch? So here's the describing word and the noun, and here's the describing word and the noun, and it would be a witch for scary, and the way to describe a clown is funny. So describing. So let's think about what we're going to be doing today with our story. It's a story about feeling anxious. That's another word for nervous. Anxious, nervous. Those are synonyms. So today's story is about feeling anxious when completing an assessment. An assessment is a test. Can you tell us about a time that you felt nervous? It might have been taking a test, or it might have been something else that you were nervous about. Think for a minute. I'll give you 10 seconds. So maybe you were thinking about going to a doctor's appointment or a dentist appointment. That might have made you nervous. Or maybe you were thinking about the last time you took a test, and maybe you weren't too sure that you knew everything on that test. Maybe you didn't study for it. Well, let's find out what happens in our story today. The name of our story is Rainy Day Analogies. And if you notice, I've highlighted the word analogies in green. And whenever you see that word in our story today, I'd like you to practice the sign for analogies. So let's go back and look at the sign for analogy. Okay, so you're taking that idea and you're making it apply to the next pattern. So it's like an idea applying to a pattern. So let's watch it again. Analogy. I'd like you to be able to do that while you're watching, or sorry, while you're listening to our story. The other thing I wanted to call your attention to was the yellow highlighted words. So throughout the story today, you'll see words that are highlighted in yellow, and that will be because I want to draw your attention to maybe the fact that it's a multiple meaning word, or maybe we want to think about the opposites or a synonym for that word, so that we're constantly reviewing all the vocabulary and the great language ideas that we've learned so far this year. We don't want to lose that information, and it really helps to review. So we'll be reviewing that just like we reviewed or looked at again the signs that we've learned so far. So let's go right to our story, our Brennan story about rainy day analogies, which is perfect because it's rainy today as I'm recording this. It was a rainy Wednesday, and Brennan Bear was very nervous. His class had been studying and learning about analogies for 2 weeks. Today, they would take a test to find out how much they had learned. Their teacher, Mrs. Maloney, passed out the tests. All right, class, she said, you may start on your tests now. Write your name at the top of your papers, then write your answers on the blanks. So I hope you practice your sign for analogy there. And let's take a look at some of our yellow highlighted words. So the word nervous can also mean anxious. So those are synonyms. And today that we're going to take a test. Another word for a test, or a synonym for the word test, is an assessment or an evaluation. So Brennan was feeling a little bit nervous about that. She said, you may start on your test now. That means to begin it. So another word for start is begin. She wanted them to write their name at the top of their papers. And I'm sure your teacher does that for you as well, gives you the direction to put your name at the top of the paper. What would be the opposite? What would be the opposite of that? Top, it's not at the top, it's at the bottom, right? So just calling your attention to words and concepts that we've learned before. Brennan looked at the first question. It said, chair is to seat, as funny is to... I don't know the answer for that one, Brennan thought to himself. I'll go on to the next one. But Brennan didn't know the answer to that one either, or the next one. In fact, Brennan didn't know any of the answers. He started to think he wasn't going to do so well on this test. Brennan tried his best, but he just didn't understand the analogies. He filled in some of the answers, but he didn't think he got all of them right. Another word for right, a synonym, is correct. He didn't think he got all of them correct. What would be the opposite of that? If it's not correct, it's incorrect or wrong. There you go. The next day, Brennan knew he would get his test back. He thought, maybe Mrs. Maloney will lose the test and I won't have to see my grade. But Mrs. Maloney had the tests in her hand and started passing them out. Brennan got his test back and found that he'd gotten only 3 out of all 10 questions right. He felt terrible. So she started passing them out, which means handing them out. So another word for passing would be handing or giving them out. Brennan felt terrible. Another word for terrible is awful or horrible. Those are synonyms. The opposite of that would mean wonderful, and he did not feel wonderful about getting only 3 out of 10 correct. Class, we have a problem, Mrs. Maloney said. I wanted you to do well on this test, but everyone had trouble. I think I need to teach you about analogies again. Remember to sign the word analogies. I've brought a fun game for us to play that will help you learn about analogies. Brennan felt a little better. He wasn't the only one who had trouble on the test, and the class was going to get to play a game. So the class played the game many times, and Brennan finally understood analogies. When Brennan took the test again, he wasn't a bit nervous. This time, Mrs. Maloney smiled when she gave the test back. Class, this is great. Everyone did a great job on the test. A stands for analogy, and A stands for this class because you've done an A+ job. So let's take a look at our yellow highlighted words. Everyone had trouble. That means everyone had difficulty. So another word for trouble could be problem or difficulty. So it wasn't easy for anybody. And down here at the end, when they retook the test, they did a great job. She was happy about that. Great can mean awesome or wonderful. So she was very pleased, and Brennan was very pleased as well. So let's make some text-to-self connections. Take 10 seconds now to think about how you can relate to this story. Either the things that actually happened in the story about being nervous about a test, or something else about class or school, or just feeling anxious or nervous, or learning how to do something you've never done before. I'll give you 10 seconds. Were you able to make a connection? If so, I'd like you to share that with the people in your home, your sisters and brothers, or cousins, or aunts and uncles, maybe grandparents, maybe parents. Talk to them about the story that we read together today and how you made a connection to that story. Now let's go on and answer some questions about the story, see how much you remember. So Mrs. Maloney's Feed Those Bears game was the game that they played in the class, and Brennan and his friends got to play it over and over again, and that really helped them learn analogies. So if you remember back from our little video clip in the beginning, we were learning that analogies are simply relationships between pairs of words that at first you don't think are there. But if you look closely, you'll be able to figure out how they relate or connect to one another. And then you'll be able to make that same sort of comparison with the next pair of words. So let's take a look at the bear over here. So he's got vegetable is to corn. So sometimes you can go forward with your analogy, and sometimes you have to go backwards to make it seem like the sentence makes more sense. So I'm going to try that with vegetable and corn. And I'm going to think about the relationship between vegetable and corn. So corn is a type of vegetable. It falls under that category of vegetable. So if I go backwards from my second word, corn is a type of vegetable. Let's see if I can figure out which pot of honey we should feed the bears. So corn is a kind of vegetable. Can I put that in a sentence, apply that sentence to this one? Turkey is a kind of meat. Does that make sense? I think so. How about leaves are a kind of rake? That doesn't make sense. So let's try this. Let's see if we can feed this to our bear. Oh, yeah, I guess we were right on that. So just like corn is a kind of vegetable, turkey is a kind of meat. Good job on that one. Let's try the next one. This time, our bear says, lemon is to lemonade. Let's think about that a minute. So lemon and lemonade. Well, I can use lemons to make a lemonade drink. That makes sense. Let's try it here. I can use a whale to make an ocean drink. No. I can use an apple to make a cider. That's a drink. Yeah, I know I can do that. So let's try to feed that to the bear. Right again. Well, look at us figuring out analogies. Wonderful. Let's try the next one. So turkey is to gobble. Well, now this isn't that sliced turkey as a kind of meat, although that's where it comes from. This time I'm thinking about the animal that walks around and says gobble, gobble. So a turkey says gobble, gobble. I think that's the relationship there. So let's go over to our honey pots. So if I say turkey says gobble, gobble, can I say duck says quack, quack? Does that make sense? I think so. How about a pencil says paper? No, that's not right. What would happen if we tried that one? It would bounce back because it's not right. So let's try this one. Yep, right again. You guys are amazing. Let's try this one. So our bear says snow is to drift. Now let's think about this word drift. That's probably not a familiar word to you, meaning you've probably not really heard that word before, or not too many times anyway. And actually it's a multiple meaning word, which means that it can have more than one meaning. So you could either drift, like your thoughts can drift and go somewhere else, or you could drift out of the line, which means like you're physically moving away from something. Or in terms of snow, when we get lots of snow, it forms a drift, which is like a pile of snow. So the more snow you get, it begins to drift into a pile and kind of get more of it. So how could I put that in a sentence? Like, a lot of snow makes a drift. That's true, especially if it's really windy out. So let's try this honey pot. A lot of fly makes a kite. Well, that definitely doesn't make sense. How about this one? A lot of rain makes a puddle. Well, that's true. I've seen that happen. Let's try it. And once again, yes, we made the right relationship and applied it to a new set of words. We just did an analogy. One more in our game. So now in this one, the bear is saying skier. So a person that skis is to ski, what they do. So noun to action. Okay, let's see. Antler is to deer. So a skier can ski, an antler can deer. It doesn't have an object action relationship. This has more of a part to whole relationship, meaning the antler is part of the deer. But that's not the same. The skier is part of the ski. No, a skier is a person who skis, just like a skater is a person who skates. So that makes sense. So let's move that over. Hey, good job. So we got an A+, just like Brennan and his friends did the second time they took their test. Wonderful. Let's take a look at some other questions. Where did Mrs. Maloney tell the students to write their names on their paper? Was it at the top of their paper or was it at the bottom? I mean, it could be either way, but what do you remember from the story? Right. It was at the top of their paper. That's usually where your name goes. How did Brennan feel at the beginning of the story and how did he feel at the end? Notice those opposite words, beginning and end. I'm going to see if this allows me to draw the faces in. You never know. This is a little funny today on the way. Oh, maybe it will. So let's take a pen. So at the beginning of the story, how did he feel? Do you remember how he did on his test? And when he actually just got the test, did he understand it at all? He was feeling kind of nervous at the beginning of the story. So let's give him eyes that are kind of wide. Sometimes when we're nervous, our eyes look like, whoa, what's happening? And those eyebrows are like, oh, I don't even know. I just don't know what to do. And maybe his mouth was like, yikes, what is happening? He was so confused. But how did he feel at the end of the story after he had had a chance to practice the analogies in that game and do well on the test? Let's see if we can draw eyes that are not so frightened and nervous, because he wasn't anymore. Remember how he felt? Yeah, he felt happy. At the end of the story, he was pleased with how he did. And his teacher was pleased. His friends were happy. So when we're happy, we have a smile on our face and our eyebrows show that we're happy too. So at the end of the story, Brennan was definitely happier and not nervous anymore. How did Brennan's class do on that first analogy test? And then how did they do on the second test? So let's pick. Remember, he wasn't the only one that did poorly. That made Mrs. Maloney sad too. So how did they do on the first one? Good or not so good? Right, not so good. But on the second test, that second time around, they did way better. They had a chance to practice. What did Brennan's class do to learn more about analogies? Oh, we've been talking a lot about that, and we did it too. What did they do? Yep, they played games. So now while you're at home, learning can be fun. You can use some of the things online, some of those online games or online learning apps to have fun while you're learning. But you're still learning, and learning should be fun. So make sure you're doing that at home so you don't lose any of your skills. Let's take a look at our learning targets. I can answer questions about a text. Did we do that today? Absolutely. And I'm hoping that you'll have conversation with the people in your home about what you did learn about today, analogies. I can use words correctly when I speak. Now you've learned maybe a couple of new words, like evaluation is the same as a test. So is the word assessment. You've learned words like nervous and anxious are the same thing. They're synonyms. And even the word drift, it's like a big pile of snow. And I can figure out how word meanings are related. That's what analogies are. So you did a great job on that. So as we close for today, boys and girls, I want to thank you for tuning in and watching our lesson on analogies. I hope you've learned a lot. And I'm going to leave you with a fun video. And so I want you to see if you can do some or not many of these dance moves. They're pretty cool. I think you'll enjoy it. Bye now.